Hello and welcome to Biz1st Review 360, where we bring you a roundup of this week's top business stories and developments that impact the economy. I'm Joel Outsgood. First, a look at our top story. Well, now Sri Lanka Ports Authority hints at a majority stake in a new East Terminal amid delays.
Minister of Ports and Shipping Arjuna Ranatunga told a media briefing that state-run Sri Lanka Ports Authority would like to retain a majority stake in Colombo Port's East Terminal, for which a private investor is being sought.
I think we might have to finish the East Terminal first and give them to establish maybe a year. That is something we might have to decide. Whoever comes in, they will have clauses saying that any other terminals we won't able to get any terminals for a period. We can, not that we can't, but I think if we are looking at a broader picture now that the loan burden goes off from us from Hambantota, I think we will be in a very strong position to at least to take the majority of the East Terminal.
Top shipping lines including Maersk, MSC, CMA and CGM along with Sri Lankan and Indian partners had offered to build and operate the East Terminal in Colombo Port's expanded New South Harbour. Sri Lanka Ports Authority is awaiting cabinet approval to buy cranes and operate the first section of the terminal, which can accommodate the largest container vessels in operation.
We are trying to get the cranes organized. I think someone asked that question. I think we are trying to get we put a cabinet paper. Now it has gone to the CCE. We are very keen to get the cranes, and because it will take another year for them to supply the cranes. For them to build cranes, it takes about 8 months to 1 year. So if we do it now, by the time we finalize whoever is going to be working with us, we could start operating. That's something we are trying to get it done. Now the major issue we feel is if you are not going to bring the cranes, then by the time we select a person, because there are regulations we have to go through, it might take 6 months, maybe a year. So by that time we will lose a lot of customers because of the draft we have, because I think by June, most probably June, July, CICT will be 100% full. So then there's a possibility that some of the ships might go to one of the competitive ports. That's the reason that we are trying to convince them to allow us to bring the cranes.
The International Monetary Fund urged the central bank to rebuild foreign reserves, maintaining exchange rate flexibility and keep an eye on inflation.
The International Monetary Fund has cautioned Sri Lanka to be vigilant in monitoring inflation and accelerate delayed structural reforms in public financial management and loss-making state-owned enterprises. An IMF mission led by Jae-woo Lee, who was in the island since mid-February 2017 to discuss the progress of the economic reforms program, has commended government efforts to increase revenue collection and automating revenue administration. The statement issued at the end of the mission says that stepping up revenue collection and automated revenue administration has helped the government meet fiscal targets. However, the IMF mission said net international reserves have fallen short of the target, and progress on implementing structural benchmarks was somewhat uneven. The delay in privatizing loss-making Sri Lankan Airlines and a pending fuel price formula expected by end 2016 has hampered the structural reform program of state-owned enterprises. Foreign reserves is a key performance criteria that Sri Lanka needs to meet to draw the next tranche of money from the IMF. The IMF mission statement said discussions will continue in Washington, D.C. during the spring meetings of the IMF and the World Bank in April. IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde was scheduled to visit Sri Lanka this month, but media reports said her visit was delayed due to an unforeseen change in her schedule.
The statement that the IMF released at the end of its latest round of discussions with the government, which is part of its review of the extended fund facility arrangement with Sri Lanka is very much in line with many of the things that the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce has been talking about, and particularly our outlook for 2017. The IMF has flagged concerns about growth very sharply decelerating towards the second half of last year, and also the outlook for this year, given the tighter fiscal policy, given the drought, and so on. So I think it's very much in line with the thinking of the private sector. The IMF program is a revenue-based fiscal consolidation program, so the onus really is on tax changes, and that is where I think the private sector is going to be watching very carefully and very closely, because there's a lot of tax reforms, changes to the Inland Revenue Act that are in the works, and I think these will certainly have an impact on business and on consumers. But given that the program is so heavily focused on revenue-based fiscal consolidation, essentially the tax side, we need to be mindful that we can't let our eyes off the ball on the expenditure side, because that's really where a lot of the budget deficit has been driven by. That's really where a lot of the leakages happen, losses of SOEs and so on. So I think from the private sector point of view, we'd like to see more effort being placed on accelerating the reforms to SOEs, more effort being placed on expenditure rationalization, not in a way that affects social welfare, but certainly in a way that cuts down wasteful spending.
American investment company, the Texas Pacific Group, also known as TPC, has been selected for the restructuring of Sri Lankan Airlines.
On the 26th of April 2016, the Cabinet decided to merge Sri Lankan Airlines with a private company. Among firms that put forward bids to invest in the national carrier Sri Lankan-linked Peace Air, Supergroup from Maldives and American-based TPG were shortlisted. There were 8 parties and it was brought down to 3. TPG is a private equity fund with decades of history. It has a history of investing in airlines and steering them in the right direction. In other words, would experienced companies come in search of us because they love us? No one comes like that. Through dialogue, we need to ensure that our portion is prepared properly and the profits will be generated. This is not a new company. In 1997, when the government of Chandrika Kumaratunga was called for bids, many placed their bids including TPG. If they were accepted back then, perhaps Sri Lankan Airlines would be connected with the global aviation network in a different way. We cannot expect to solve everything with one company. Sometimes several firms will have to be called in. They have only been selected. The discussions will take another 6 months. We do not see the TPG as one that can be vested with the responsibility of operating a national carrier. We do not see it as an experienced firm in civil aviation. The restructuring process lacks transparency. There were many allegations that were made through the media. There is doubt that the TPG is going to invest through a firm that is linked with the Treasury bond scam. The International Transportation Service will be informed of this in London, and we hope that they will intervene in this.
Welcome back. You're with Biz1st Review 360. Well, now, new British ambassador assures Japan that it will remain priority for free trade agreements after Britain leaves the European Union.
The newly appointed British ambassador to Japan, Paul Maiden, spoke to reporters on Thursday, saying Japan will be prioritized for new free trade agreements after Britain leaves the EU.
One of the opportunities for the UK once we leave the EU will be the opportunity to negotiate new free trade agreements with third countries. It may well be that we will be able to be more ambitious and go further in those agreements because we're negotiating just as one country rather than having to take into account the concerns of 28 countries. So I would imagine that given the size of the Japanese economy and the strength of our economic relationship, Japan would be a priority country for one of those new free trade agreements.
He also added that exploratory discussions for trade were possible since engaging in negotiations with third countries is prohibited under EU policies.
We can't, under the rules of the EU, formally engage in negotiations with third countries while we're still a member. We have to wait until we leave. But in the meantime, of course, we can have exploratory discussions.
Britain's decision to leave the EU has sparked concern for many Japanese financial institutions and other firms that have counted on access to the giant EU market.
On International Women's Day, Wall Street firm on Tuesday put up a statue of a girl in front of Lower Manhattan's well-known bronze charging bull, as if it to fearlessly stare it down.
So she is a symbol of women's empowerment. As we all know, the bull has been here on Wall Street for many years as a symbol of power and of influence and economic progress. And we thought that the bull, who has a lot of very fine masculine traits, needed a partner. And so we decided that she would be an appropriate partner for the bull.
I think it's awesome. I've been here before. It took me a second, did I miss that before? But I love how she's standing right in front of the bull, facing all the challenges coming to her. I think it's fantastic. It's beautiful. Yeah. I love the location. I love everything about it.
Yeah, this is my first time to the bull. I've been here for a while, but I wondered if that was new. And when we saw it, we were both very struck, almost emotionally, like that. You know, the bull is kind of a symbol almost of male power in a way, and this little girl is just standing there triumphant. I think it's gorgeous. I love it.
Yeah.
On our segment, Trending Today, we look at a milestone achieved by women in a male-dominant industry.
In a first in South Asia, state-run Sri Lanka Ports Authority commissioned a batch of lady gantry crane operators on International Women's Day. The first batch of female gantry crane operators attached to the Ports Authority underwent training at the Mahapolo Ports and Maritime Academy. The graduation ceremony was presided by Minister of Ports and Shipping Arjuna Ranatunga and President of the World Maritime University.
On this momentous day, 12 young women are graduating as crane operators here in Sri Lanka. And as has earlier been indicated, an absolutely unique moment in history. As others have said, this year's International Women's Day, the theme is Be Bold for Change. These 12 women have been bold. Your graduation today cannot be bolder. Some of the themes for today's Women's Day call on us all to take action, to challenge bias and inequality, to campaign against violence, to forge women's advancement, to celebrate women's achievement, and to champion women's education.
A gantry crane operator's main role is lifting and positioning containers safely and efficiently from the wharf onto the ship, and also lifting containers from the ship back onto the wharf. The efficiency of ports rely heavily on gantry crane operations and is a highly skilled job. Due to lower wages, Sri Lanka has also been losing skilled gantry crane operators to the Middle East.
And now, it's workplace exercises that you could do when you are a little bit stressed. So let's loosen up a bit for this.
Let me see you get up, get down. Everybody move your body. Let me see you shake that body. Come on and work that body. Drop it like it's hot. Get up, get down. Everybody move your body. Let me see you get up, get down. Everybody move your body.
Hi, I'm Jessica Canizales from With Grace and Joy. Welcome to Trending Today. I want to talk to you today a little bit about how important it is to breathe while you're sitting at your chair in your office space. So we've talked before about moving the body, twisting, bending, folding, getting up, using the wall to just really open up the shoulders. And what's really important is that we also fuse a mindful breath when we're moving. And sometimes just taking a little pause from your desk and bringing your focus inward and just connecting with your breath can be really calming, really relaxing, and even healing. So just take a few breaths here, feeling how nice and long and smooth your spine is. And allow those breaths to move up this vertical line, creating an alkaline effect in the brain and the body. As we begin to get into Kapalabhati, the accent or the stress is on the exhale, and we move the belly or the solar plexus in and out along the same beat as our heart. So we'll inhale here and exhale. You want to take about 3 rounds, anywhere between 30, 45, or 60 seconds each round. I'm going to move into another breath now that serves a very different purpose. So this is Anuloma Viloma or Nadi Shodhan. And it's a breath that is using alternate nostrils to move oxygen or prana through the body. You don't have to use your hands to close off your nostrils. You can visualize the breath just moving in and out of isolated nostrils, but it's helpful for most yogis if we use our hand. So we're just going to raise our arm up and we're dropping into the Vishnu Mudra. So we're taking ring and middle fingers, dropping it down, and we're going to take the thumb and press it into the right nostril. Here we inhale through the left. And we gently close the left, open up the right, and release. We'll inhale right here through the right nostril. And now you'll close it off, open up the left, and release. We're going to start round 2, inhaling here. Close the nostril, open the other side, and exhale. The first breath, Kapalabhati, where you're pumping the stomach, really is going to create a very quick pick-me-up.
Get up, get down, everybody move your body. Let me see you shake that body. Come on and work that body. Drop it like it's hot. Get up, get down, everybody move your body. Let me see you. Get up, get down, everybody move your body.
It's inspiring to see the private sector leading the way on sustainability and recognizing tonight the institutions and the accounting companies that have excelled in their efforts. Sustainability for the UN looks at working on our common efforts and our common interests to achieve the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. This is an ambitious global development agenda, which I'm sure all of you are very familiar with, which is designed to ensure that we all work together to leave nobody behind. Sustainability, as you all know, is vital to ensuring the future of businesses and enterprises. But for us at the UN, it's equally about ensuring the future of people, prosperity, partnerships, peace, and the planet. But our children and our grandchildren will have to deal with the impacts of what's been done by our generation and our parents' generation to the environment. 2016 was deemed the hottest year on Earth. And Sri Lanka, as already mentioned, isn't immune. During just 6 months, we saw devastating floods and then a harsh drought, which is only beginning to be understood in terms of its impact. And I understand that we've already had a number of very, very tragic suicides related to the debt that these multiple impacts of climate change are having on the poorest families, already mentioned. So the UN stands ready to support the government of Sri Lanka to meet the needs of those who are affected by climate change and disasters. But we also know that we need to focus now, for our generation and the next generations, on preventing and adapting to measures that will halt climate change and empower communities to mitigate and adapt to what's to come. If we look just at tourism, Businesses which make a conscious effort to move away from tourism that damages the environment, that terrifies animals and destroys people's communities, which switch to ecotourism, developing tours and hotels and other infrastructure that protects the environment, they can significantly change both how a country or a region is perceived, and a competitive edge in high-end tourism can be achieved. And that's the case as happening in Sri Lanka at the moment. Sri Lanka and other yet to be fully explored global gems need to embrace sustainability around tourism, one of its greatest potential assets. Sustainability comes into play when we all stand up and take responsibility, when companies, the UN and others look beyond the scope of production and profit. And as was already said, the full impact of switching to sustainable development will initially impact on profits. We have to understand the impact of products on the environment and integrate sustainability to reduce or avoid those negative impacts. Both supply and demand have led to significant modifications and changes of how business is done. I mean, if we just think of the automobile industry, the changes that are happening now, cleaner sources of power, which mean cleaner air in cities and towns, but challenge old industries and threaten old livelihoods, but ultimately make sense for the next generation of people who will be in business, who will be consumers, and who will live in the communities we will leave to them.
Tourist arrivals dropped 0.1% in February 2017 to 197,517, as Chinese arrivals dropped 21.6% to 25,248 due to daytime airport closure for runway repairs. The Bandar Naik International Airport is closed from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. for 4 months until April 6, 2017. Repairs have disrupted flights, particularly for the national carrier Sri Lankan Airlines. February also saw a drop in Indian tourist arrivals by 0.9% to 26,320. However, arrivals from more traditional markets grew by 4.4% to 76,770, with the UK market showing a growth of 5.3% to 20,218 and Germany up 2% to 14,712.
Up next, inspiration from a top woman corporate leader. Well, that's all the news we got for you tonight. Join us next Friday at 9:30 p.m. on TV1 for another edition of Biz1st Review 360, the pulse of Sri Lankan business. Good night and have yourself a wonderful weekend ahead.